Welcome to Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages. Teaching English to a non-native English speaker is not like teaching any other subject. Language skills are acquired as the learner communicates, sometimes in very imprecise English, in order to have their needs met. Depending on where they're from, the length of time they've been in this country, and the opportunities they've had to interact with native speakers in English. The success or failure of English as a second language education is not likely gauged by how well they learn the rules of English or the ability to master the principles of correct usage, but to the degree to which students are able to learn and meet their everyday needs using the English language. Learners will often be learning English while they're also acquiring survival skills for operating in the community, while becoming acquainted with aspects of life in New Brunswick, while meeting new people and hopefully having fun exploring their new home and community. These social benefits should not be underestimated. People from different cultures exhibit different ways of behaving when they communicate. For example, when you and I talk to each other, we operate with certain behavior that is specific to our own culture, which we both understand. To begin with, we understand the meaning of the words we speak to each other. But equally important, we know how close we can stand to each other as not to cause discomfort, how much eye contact is acceptable, when is appropriate to touch the other person, when the situation might call for humor, and so forth. These aspects of behavior communicate to another person just as much as our words do. I remember when I was living in Winnipeg and I started doing a lot of work with the French community there in St. Boniface, where it was the rule, not the exception, that colleagues greeted each other with an air kiss on each cheek. Not having worked in that culture, this was very new to me, and certainly wouldn't have been something I would try with my English colleagues. In one part of the world, the messages communicated by facial expressions, body language, posture, proximity, touching, and eye movements are very different from what they are in another part of the world, or in my case, just another part of the city. This nonverbal communication expresses just as much as our verbal language does, if not more. Cultural differences extend beyond language and nonverbal communication to perceptions and expectations. We are the product of historical and social influences that have forged our particular way of life. In the same way, your students will bring with them the values and attitudes of their own culture. Your understanding of cultural differences and your sensitivity to them will be just as important to your students as the spoken language you teach. As you are teaching your learner how to listen to words, you will also be teaching them to read nonverbal signs to ascertain meaning. Without these skills, their life in Canada could be a continual struggle for understanding. But don't worry, you already have some skills that will help you be effective in cross cultural settings. Your obvious interest in their culture will encourage your learner to use English as they share with you experiences from their own life. As their tutor, your goal will not just be to teach English grammar and vocabulary, but to help students make sure they understand what messages they are receiving from others and that they too are clearly communicating to others what they intend. So, what do students need? Most learners looking for ESL support are seeking survival language skills. These skills will enable them to use the bank, the post office, the supermarket, or to seek help from doctors or teachers. Establishing a reassuring and supportive environment for many ESL learners, you may be one of their first close contacts who speak English. There are many different ideas about what actually occurs when people learn a second language. There are even more ways of judging just when someone has acquired that second language. For your learners who must live and function in an English speaking environment, their ability to get their ideas across in English is the only reasonable way to determine whether they have adequately learned a new language. Native English speakers will believe your student speak English if they can give and receive information in English that communicates what they intend. That is not to say that grammar and vocabulary are not important. They are, but they are merely tools that we use to accomplish the communication goals. We can take some of our cues from how children learn. Children are forever asking, "What's this?" We provide new words and let children know they have permission to ask for the names of things in their world. Let your students learn the names and labels of things even though they may not know the grammatical structures to use them properly. Let them explore. Model the correct form, but be prepared for imperfection. Expect grammatical errors as part of the learning process. A student who makes an error is exploring language and will learn faster than the silent participant in the corner who is just memorizing conjugations. Provide ample listening experiences. Adult teachers are constantly describing the world to children. See the pretty flower or touch your nose. We need to provide adult learners ample listening experiences, but do not expect learners to be able to reproduce everything that they understand. Finally, we never expect a child to learn language out of context. We applaud the smallest gain and accept incomplete learning as a natural occurrence. The environment is relaxed and anxiety free because we have every confidence that the child will learn to speak. Provide a meaningful context for your learning activities that takes into account the feelings and concerns of the learner. Students who have positive feelings about English and the people who speak English are more highly motivated to learn the language. Students cannot learn effectively when they are anxious and upset, so set a tone of cheerful confidence in each session. Remember, students learn at different rates. Language aptitude, age, personality, cultural and linguistic backgrounds all affect language learning. Teach language as it's really used. For example, don't worry about the difference between who and whom. Teach grammar as it's needed for successful communication. Accented speech and some grammatical errors are inevitable and acceptable as long as learners can communicate effectively. The new language has been superimposed on an existing system. There is bound to be interference between the two. Language is best learned when it is incidental to some other task. Set up situations that encourage learners to increase their language ability and their willingness to take more risks in speaking. When learners first arrive in a country whose language they don't know, they are often so overwhelmed by the strange language that they stop listening. An early goal in language teaching, therefore, is to give students the confidence they need to open their ears and try to understand what they're hearing. If students can understand even a portion of what is being said to them and around them, every experience can become a language learning opportunity. We're going to talk about 3 ways teachers can help students develop their listening skills. The first is total physical response. It's a technique that stresses the link between words and the concrete reality they represent. This relationship is established when students physically carry out a teacher's command. To do this, for instance, you may use a verb, for example, touch or point, and a noun or object, touch the chair, point to the blue book. You can start this with modeling the behavior the first few times. As time and their knowledge progresses, you can also make this more complex, adding multiple opportunities to respond to commands. For instance, stand up and walk to the window, touch the window, walk to the desk, pick up the blue book. Another technique is listening for specific information. To help learners listen for specific information, give them a set of questions in advance of the listening exercise. For the exercise, read a paragraph. Something simple like Susan went to Sobeys with her husband Jim. They picked up a roast chicken and potatoes for dinner. They caught the bus home afterwards. The questions to that paragraph could be: where did Susan and her husband go? What is her husband's name? What did they buy for dinner? And last, how did they get home? Dictation is the last technique here. When a learner writes what the teacher dictates, they accomplish two language learning objectives. One, they comprehend the general meaning of the message, and two, they combine that understanding with what they've learned about English to write out the phrase or sentence. If they're not at the point of writing out an English phrase or sentence, you can also do dictation verbally, having the learner repeat back to you what you just said. So for instance, you can use the same paragraph we used before, with the tutor saying, Susan went to Sobeys with her husband Jim, and the learner repeating back, Susan went to Sobeys with her husband Jim. Obviously, at some point, your students cannot go through life listening and nodding meaningfully. They're going to have to communicate with others. The development of speaking skills should be the goal of every session. Your students need speaking skills that will give them confidence to use English in their new world, at the supermarket, the restaurant, school, bank, and of course with their new friends. Your role is to provide language experiences that encourage learners to use their new language. There's 4 techniques you can use to do this: pattern drills, dialogues, role play, and conversation practice. Pattern drills enable students to practice specific sentence patterns. Within these patterns, they see how a variety of words can be used to send different messages. Drills should be developed to fit a particular communication goal, such as using a post office, planning a party, or shopping for clothes. If students are planning a trip to the post office, a substitution drill could prepare them to negotiate with the postal clerk. For instance, the teacher or tutor would say, I want to buy a stamp. The learner repeats, I want to buy a stamp. Then the teacher substitutes stamp for another word that you might find at a post office, such as a postcard, an envelope, a mailbox. At the grocery store, it could be types of food. In both situations, it can be helpful also to use props so they can can relate the word to the sound to the object. As the student progresses, you can give them the first part of the sentence, I want to buy, and then hold up the object, making them correctly identify it and complete the sentence. A dialogue is an interaction between two people that could happen in your learner's real world. Learners find themselves in common situation, receive a standard opener, and they're able to respond. Because our language contains many rituals and patterns, students find they can really use these dialogues that they've memorized. A sample dialogue may be the tutor asking, What's your phone number? The learner provides their phone number. The tutor will say, Excuse me? The learner may repeat the phone number. And then the tutor may ask them to write it down. The learner does so and hands it to the tutor. The tutor says thank you. You can create dialogues for different situations, such as at the grocery store, the department store, or even the cafe. Role play is an extension of the dialogue practice. It has no memorized scripts. Students are given the setting and a task, but the dialogue is improvised, such as going to the cafe and ordering a coffee. The goal in role playing is to successfully communicate. If this is accomplished, then the role play has been successful. Role playing is usually incorporated into broader lessons with specific communication goals. Conversation practice is an extremely important part of language learning. Conversations and discussions cause learners to use their emerging language ability to communicate their ideas. They use the word structures and words that they know, but even more importantly, they learn new words and new structures so that they can communicate their ideas to others. Set aside a portion of most sessions for conversation. During the early stages of language learning, teachers can help students by asking questions about their original country or their life in Canada. These are usually factual questions which can be answered using simple structures and limited vocabulary. The learner can also ask the tutor similar questions. For your students, listening and speaking skills will be far more important than reading and writing skills. However, you will need to consider how to help them build the basic reading and writing competencies. To determine the reading objectives for your learner, start by making a list of the tasks your learner will need to accomplish that require reading. Your list may include finding a number in the phone book, locating an apartment in a classified section of the newspaper, using a cookbook, ordering from a restaurant, buying food or drugs or clothing in a store, understanding a child's report card, understanding bus schedules, following road signs. For instance, you may use the white pages of the telephone book to help a learner match identical words and alphabetize. You can build the learner's mini skills by doing one of the very simplest of reading tasks, finding an identical word. Students are given a sheet of paper with rows of 5 or 6 words. They circle the matching words. Make the task a little more challenging by having at least 2 words that are spelled similarly. For example, brother and bother. Once those words can be easily matched and your learner has no trouble doing that, you may move on to alphabetizing. And once that can be accomplished, you can move on to white pages in a phone book and practice finding names, because they'll understand the alphabetizing within the phone book. Another interesting reading practice you can do with a phone book is to review the restaurant section. Create a scenario like your son wants pizza for his birthday on Saturday. You may ask them to find a restaurant in the phone book that serves pizza. Find out what their hours are. Does it say so in the ad? What else do they serve besides pizza? You can develop similar exercises with any of the tasks on the list. To develop a sound writing program, the first step is to determine the writing needs of your learner. Your list of needs will probably include completing forms, checks, deposit slips, applications of various types, addressing letters and packages, sending a text or creating a Facebook post, writing short notes or letters. In order to complete these tasks, learners need to understand what the format requires and then practice using that format. For instance, having a bank account requires students to complete the application form to open an account, to fill out a deposit slip, to write a check, to balance a checkbook. You should be able to get these forms from a bank and make photocopies. These forms are easy to master, but learners need to practice. It is better to have short sessions on this than doing several repetitions at once. You can do 1 or 2 of these per session, and you will see that most have a pattern, and you can help your learner identify that pattern. Improving pronunciation. Almost everyone who learns a language after childhood speaks that new language with a foreign accent. Sometimes this accent is slight and does not block communication. In other cases, the accent is so strong it's difficult to understand the intended meaning of the sentence. In the past, language teachers combated this problem by devising elaborate drills to teach the sounds and patterns of the new language. Today, most address pronunciation problems when they arise and in the context of the intended communication. Pronunciation problems may have sources ranging from errors in a single sound to improper intonation of the entire sentence. The goal is not to speak English like it's their mother tongue, but to have intelligible communication. Articulation. There are thousands of sounds that can be used in human speech, but each language uses only a limited portion of these sounds. All English sounds are made by pushing air through the mouth or nose. These sounds vary when we change the air movement by using our lips, teeth, and tongue to obstruct air at certain articulation points. For instance, we shape the words boy, pen, win, man with our lips. You try it. Say each word slowly and feel where your lips shape the word. Boy, pen, win, man. Now try these words. This, there, then. Feel how you form the sound with your tongue on teeth. Again, do this slowly. This, there, then. Words like kitchen, carry, gate, garden, with hard K and G sounds are made in the back of our throat. Sound sets. Tent, stop, butter, mountain. In each of these words, the sounds around the T cause the pronunciation to change. Practicing sound sets is another way we can improve pronunciation. We can also look at words and word parts. Sounds in English are grouped to form root words, prefixes, and suffixes. The way word parts are pronounced often depends on the other sounds in the word. We can look at where the stressor is. Every multisyllabic word in English has an accent stressing one syllable over the others. Therefore, if the stress is placed on the wrong syllable, it can make the word unintelligible. Rhythm. There are two general rhythmic patterns used in the world's languages: syllable timing and stress timing. Languages like Spanish, Japanese, and Tagalog use syllable timing. All syllables are of about equal length. Therefore, sentences with an equal number of syllables can be spoken in the same amount of time. English, on the other hand, is a stress-timed language. Stress still occurs at rhythmic intervals, but only important syllables are stressed. In learning a new language, students often superimpose the rhythm of their native language onto the sentences they are learning. Intonation. The meaning of a sentence can be altered by changing the intonation pattern. Simple statements usually end with the voice rising, then falling on the last word. Intonation is an important part of the meaning of a sentence. Sometimes beginning students need to practice a sentence in segments before they can manage the whole sentence. Think about intonation. Pronunciation is an element of all language teaching. Students often know where their pronunciation problems are because people will misunderstand their message. Pronunciation problems often require long and repeated work because one is training both the mouth and the brain to use the new language. Let's take a quick look at resources. We have two main resources that you will find at your council offices. Lubbock Way to English. The teacher's manuals are guides that enable you to cover the elements of English which your student has to learn. You'll also be able to write a lesson from scratch on topics that are relevant to an immediate need your student may have. You will be teaching the dialogue, vocabulary, structure focus, and pronunciation using the same procedures that are in the manual. It will include a list of visual aids, a dialogue, a list of vocabulary words, structure focus, pronunciation, and reading and writing. Pretty much all what we've previously discussed. The Lubbock Way to English can also be used in conjunction with the Lubbock Way to Reading. The second resource I'd like to point out is Life Prints, ESL for Adults. This is a 4-level series that builds language acquisition skills in the context of everyday life experiences. The organizing principle of Life Prints is context rather than language structure. The key idea behind Life Prints is that what the learner does with language is more important than what he or she knows about that language, and that language is most effectively learned, as we said, in authentic contexts. Reading, writing, listening, and speaking skills are integrated into each lesson. Text and illustrations draw on the adult learner's knowledge and experiences. Activities help students transfer what they've learned in the classroom to life and work situations. Structured grammar lessons are included in each unit, plus 2 additional lessons are available at the end of the book. I've included the links here so you can learn more about each of these resources. You will also see both resources have some free downloadable files as well. Other resources. As a tutor, you may be able to find these resources at your council office, or if needed, your council office may be able to request them from the Lubbock Literacy New Brunswick office. Some of these resources are Teaching Adults, a fabulous ESL resource book. English No Problem, another series for new English learners. Grammar-wise, I'll talk all about the grammar. Road to Work, That's Life, and picture dictionaries. You can learn more about them at that link, which when you download the PowerPoint, you'll be able to use. And there's some additional online resources that might be fun. There's a number of sites which give ESL games. things you can do with your learner in a one-on-one session. Also, there are some tips for perfect English pronunciation. If you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Laubach Literacy New Brunswick or to your council office. You can contact Carol at Laubach Literacy at the following email address: info@llnb.ca, or you can call 506-384-6371. Happy tutoring!